On this episode of the Raise podcast, I sit down with Kyle Vaughn, the Assistant Director of Athletic Fundraising at Ashland. Kyle was an Evertrue 40 Under 40 winner, and he was voted MVP of our Raise conference in 2019. Kyle shares his perspective on building a community around athletics and how he uses social media engagement and a giving funnel approach to really fuel his donor pipeline. Kyle is an optimistic and enthusiastic guy, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. Here we go. Welcome, Raise listeners. Today it's my pleasure to host Kyle Vaughn, the Associate Director of Athletics Development at Ashland University, on our show. Welcome, Kyle.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
So, Kyle, we really got connected in person at this summer's Raise conference. You were a 40 Under 40 recipient at Evertrue, and I just remember you being front row in the middle of the entire conference, and I'd love to kind of get your perspective on just that experience, what the conference was like, and then we'll get into your background and how you ended up on the show today.
Well, I love going to conferences because it's a great opportunity to hear what others are doing. And I like the Raise conference in particular is you bring people that are not in our profession that come up and talk. So love pop, all those things. And what they do, we can implement in what we do. And so just hearing their stories and whatnot was a lot of fun. But I'm big on you should break out from your group. So if you go there with a bunch of colleagues, I don't hang out with my colleagues. I was the only one from Ashland, so it wasn't hard, but we get to see each other all the time. But go and hang out with people and talk about their shops, hear what's going on there, hear some of the struggles, hear some of the same struggles, some of the same things that they're trying to accomplish, and come back with great ideas. In addition to that, I was in admissions for a little bit, and always the front row was open, and those later arrivals, they were always really embarrassed because there's nowhere to sit, and I would just grab them and say, hey, 4.0, sit up front, and we'd walk up front.
4.0, sit up front. There we go.
And moms and dads always liked that a lot, and so we had a lot of fun, and that's just kind of how I am, just outgoing, and I want to take everything in that I can.
Well, it's a good segue into a little bit of your background. So you're at Ashland University in Ohio. You are either the sole or one of a small group focused on athletics fundraising.
Yep.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about Ashland, the current sort of team structure, and then walk us through your journey, because you've had a really good run at Ashland with good sort of shifts around campus,
yeah.
But you've landed in a really good spot, and I have no doubt great things will continue. But why don't you walk us a little bit through that journey? And I noticed as well that when you graduated college, it was sort of in the middle or just around the financial crisis, and you spent some time in the financial services world. And so I'm just kind of curious to get your perspective on what it was like working in that industry, which in many regards might be almost the polar opposite of higher education.
Well, so you always have mentors along the way in your life. And one of my closest mentors actually was never a professor. She was someone I worked for as a student here. She was the director of institutional research. Karen Little, she is maybe 5 foot, but you would never want to cross her. She is fierce, and she always called it like it was. So she was an extremely important person to me as an undergrad. Like you said, I went into financial advising, but I was still in the community. So I had the opportunity to go and maybe vent my frustrations about the profession. I just didn't really enjoy the pressure of trying to overcome objections. My philosophy was, I'm sitting in front of someone and I'm talking about opportunities to invest your money, ways to prepare for retirement, help your kids go to college, whatever it was. But at the end of the day, it was their choice. And so when you get calls and say, hey, we got to overcome that objection, we got to get the sale. Well, to me, I'm like, you know what? This is the long game. And maybe it will come because they feel more comfortable with me. They don't feel pushed, whatever it was. Well, that's never good enough. But one day, Karen just comes pounding on my door and says, I know you're not liking it. If you want to get a job at AU, I can get you an interview. From there, it's on you. And so I was able to start in the registrar's office. If there's a place to start in higher ed, it's there, because every phone call seems to go through there, and you learn everything about the university.
Tell me more about that. I can tell you I haven't spent much time in the registrar's office since probably final semester of college. So what's
Well,
going on?
you can be hated there because, oh, I want to register for classes. Oh, you can't because of X, Y, and Z. And so there's that. I need a transcript. Oh, you can't get one because of X, Y, and Z. There was always maybe an issue that you had to like take care of with that person first. So when I was a student here, maybe it wasn't the greatest place to go to because there were a lot low morale maybe, or just kind of sick of always having to deal with complaints. But I just tried to approach it in a different way. Had a lot of fun in there. We had a crazy group. I'll share this story. I'd always play music and you'd have to G-chat your requests to me and I would just kind of blare it. And someone goes, you won't answer the phone next time in your DJ voice. And oh, I did. And we took a request. I wish I could remember the song, but you know, the phone rings and I'm like, coming to you live from Ashland University. And then the other side of the phone, she just cracked up and she goes, I just want a transcript. And we had a great laugh. And I just think about what I'm doing now. That alum had a fun experience with her university. We got her transcript ordered, got everything taken care of. But we tried to change the attitude in that office. I did a lot with transfers, and that's what led me to admissions. And I handled all of our transfer recruitment for 2 years. And so no better person to talk about how your transfers credit than the guy that was awarding the credit after talking to faculty and staff. So I was able to really transition easily into that role. If I had a class coming in, I didn't know how it would transfer. I knew the professor to call, say, hey, this person took this class at whatever college. Would you accept it here like this? To try to help those students out.
So tell me a little bit about the transfer recruitment process, because I feel like that's one kind of subcategory of the enrollment space I have not had much exposure to. How much of that is fielding inbound requests, somebody writing in or applying saying, I want to transfer, versus more of an outbound kind of aggressive recruitment strategy that I think most general enrollment has to embark upon?
I would say more of it's them expressing interest, but there are transfer, what they call fairs. There are 2-year schools that put on fairs where 4-year schools come and say, hey, why don't you come here and finish? And in some cases, you have what's called an articulation agreement, meaning if you go here 2 years, you leave with an associate's degree in this, and then you can transfer to AU or whatever school it may be that you have that agreement. You take these classes, then you have your 4-year degree. And so there's some of that that's going on. If you stayed in that role long term, you probably were looking at other 2 years and how to make that transition happen easily, because then you're ultimately the no-brainer. If I go here, I want to finish at AU because I know it works. But that's not, man, life with transfer students, a lot of times something's gotten in the way, or you got to be nimble. You got to be able to figure out problems for them. So the biggest question they have is, how long is it going to take me to finish? And so the one thing that I usually could do is say, here's your roadmap. Unfortunately, it's going to take you 2.5 years, or here, you can get it done in 2 years. But if you couldn't answer that question, boy, why would they ever recruit here or come here? Because they don't know how long it's going to take to finish. That's terrifying. And so I did go to transfer fairs. I didn't realize I was breaking a rule. You're not allowed to stand in front of the table. Like, I would come around the side and I just interact with people, and the lady came up that was running and goes, you have to stay behind your table. I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, you can't be out. And I was like, oh, so learned some things there. It was kind of interesting, but you just, hey, a lot of times just explain what Ashland is, what we're doing. Oh, you're in this, here's a great transition for you to come here to get your 4-year degree, which is ultimately what those people wanted.
I mean, one of the things, I haven't spent a lot of time around the enrollment space, but one of the things I really like about that dynamic is just how aggressive the timeline is. You know, you only have a certain window for that transfer student who's thinking about making a decision, and you've got to move fast or you're going to lose out to somebody else. And I think even with the typical, undergraduate enrollment cycle, you experience the same thing. Whereas I think one of the things that can be a bit of a challenge at times in the advancement space is, because we are playing the long game and because we have 30, 40, 50 years to ultimately really build a relationship that hopefully has philanthropic benefits to both sides, there isn't always that same sense of urgency that you feel in the enrollment world. So I'm curious to kind of get your perspective on that transition. Obviously, the annual fund has, an annual calendar cycle similar to the enrollment calendar. But from a major gifts perspective, obviously it can be much more in that lifelong relationship pace.
Yeah, actually kind of something I was thinking, right, as I was talking and you were asking your question, is understanding our alumni better. Lynn Wester presented at the conference and she said something about, we all care about all this generational stuff, but the problem is we're making assumptions on where people are in their lives. And I think that can apply to these transfer students are probably at different points in their life. They're a different alum. Sometimes they don't even live on campus. So like knowing that group of people, because our annual appeals might need to be different, targeted and segmented differently based on even that aspect of that. In terms of the change, yeah.
Or what led to, first of all, for you, you're in the registrar's office, you become a bit of a specialist around the transfer student requests, and then you make the move into transfer student recruitment, admissions, right, and then eventually make the move into the advancement shop. Had you had any interaction with that group in advance? What was the catalyst to even explore something around campus like that?
Well, sort of just, so Margaret Pomfret's our VP, and I had a few conversations with her prior about kind of career. And so the funniest thing is the beauty of working at your alma mater is they remember what you did when you're a student. And I used to do the shot clock. Well, I essentially do the clock for almost every one of our home basketball games. And so I was at a basketball game, and at the time, Fred Finks, the president, he goes, "Hey, there's an annual giving position. I think you'd be great for it." And I was like, never really thought of that. So had a conversation with Margaret and then kind of learned what this job is. I'll tell you right now, you don't really graduate going, "I'm going to be a fundraiser." I never crossed my mind, but man, did a lot of it appeal to me. Tracking, like having good data, segmenting it correctly, having a good message, consistent message, and getting people, communicating with them the right way in the right phases of their lives. And that's still a struggle. It always will be a struggle. But at least I'm conscious of it and I'm able to use that. I credit a lot of that to my business degree from here. Took a lot of classes on analytics through my economics, and that's important to me. So like I have an Excel sheet tracking exactly how every one of my direct mails do. How are my emails performing? Those things matter because I need to look at it and prepare for next year. And so I don't know exactly why Fred thought I was a good choice, but it led to a conversation with Margaret, which ultimately led to me applying and then getting that. 2 years of annual giving was fantastic. Had huge successes, had a great coworker that we were able to hire on, Amanda Mittis, who now runs it. We were able to change a lot of things. And then that's ultimately, I think, what's helped me get to where I'm at, because I'm running comprehensively athletics giving. So my annual giving strategy stuff is important, but also now I'm doing major gift work.
So tell me a little bit about just why you feel you and Amanda were so successful, whether it was just strategic changes or actual results that were generated, because I think in general, it's been a difficult time for annual giving when you look at the industry stats around participation and donor count. Did you buck those trends? Are you bucking those trends? What were some of the big moves you made that maybe would be replicable to some of our other listeners, perhaps?
Consistency. So when do you solicit? We operated on, hey, this is our quarter one. Let's do our quarter one mailer. Now this is our quarter two mailer, so on and so forth. Well, one of the biggest things we implemented was it was actually an anniversary card solicitation. So you made your gift in the month of January. You're getting solicited in the month of January. You're also being reminded what you gave to, how much you gave, and we invite you to continue this. And the response rate hovered around 30%, and average gift size was always moving up because we kind of asked for an upgrade. But I think that was one of the best strategies we implemented. We had that consistent. We were operating on their timeline. We weren't assuming, hey, they want to give because our fiscal year ends on this date or whatever it may be. Of course, we still had the traditional, hey, we're going to still send something out at this time, and this time. But we also did some A/B testing. We learned a lot about ourselves. Direct mail is not a place to try to acquire donors. Stuff like that. It's a waste of money.
Why do you say that? How do you know? Because I feel like there are a lot of people listening right now still trying to use direct mail to acquire donors.
Well, stats just didn't lie. We sent something to someone who was a non-donor or a side bunt, and the direct mail did not perform. In some cases, some segments would be 0 responses.
I mean, what's an example? You send out 500 letters, get 0 or more?
Yeah, something like that. I should pull those up. I probably have the old things to look, but we had segments that were essentially, we knew they were non-donors that were 0 responses. And then, but if we had someone who was 25 consecutive year donor, you're up in the 60s, 70s. And then, and of course you assume that's right, but now we have data that proves that's right. And so that's why our day of giving has come into play. That's where we acquire donors. It's just the place that we do it because we create an event around it. We create a lot of excitement around it. We make it competitive. And that's where we get all of our new donors. That's the place that we have our donor count rise. 700 plus donors last year, day of giving in 24 hours. But that's a testament to the annual giving team and Amanda's team. We partner with the College of Business and our PR, so we have a lot of student involvement. And for the first time ever, we have our senior class going, we want to give, here's how we want to do it, and here's how we want to help raise money. And that's a different trend that we didn't have in the past. So that's how we kind of did it, but we had data to tell us this is a bad way to go.
And so you had this strong success, have partnered with Amanda. She's now leading the effort around annual giving.
Yep.
What led you to take the role in athletics, and what was it like going from kind of one really specific focus area in a broader effort to more of a comprehensive approach as a team of one?
Well, yeah. So I have my advancement friends across the street now. So our structure is this. I'm a development employee. I'm a report on our advancement side. However, I sit within athletics. So it's a little different because you feel like you're a part of two teams. Obviously, I see my athletic team's mates a lot more now because I'm sitting over here. I try to make a trip across, go around and see people. They're my friends. I love to hear what they're doing. So there's that dynamic going on. The reason why, though, my wife played volleyball for 4 years here. I played soccer. We still followed all the athletics. I was at every basketball game doing the clock. And when this position became something they were going to create, I was like, yes, that is for me. It allows me to do a lot of things I love. I did sit in our advancement services chair for a little bit. I do like Excel. I am a big numbers guy. So I did a lot of stuff with our database. But this position, to me, was a no-brainer. Allow me to do a little bit of that, but also now I'm going out seeing people talking about AU athletics. Our athletics are incredible. Top ranked teams, national championship contenders. It's easy to sell that stuff. I talk to coaches all the time. Don't tell me what you need. Tell me where you're going. I say it all the time. I said, we know you need things. Don't tell me what you need. Tell me where this program is going to go. If half of your alumni base gives $10 a month, if they can commit Netflix to you, they can say, you're as important as Netflix to us. And that's $12,000 for certain teams. Like, I've done the math. I'm like, because they don't get it, but I'm just like, if you had half of your alumni base give $10 a month, that's $12,000. What would you do?
So I'm sure you hear a lot from the coaches on what they need, or you wouldn't respond that way. And it's timely, as I was down at Brown University on Saturday, which is my alma mater, and I've taken over as vice president of fundraising for the Football Association. So volunteer capacity, but collaborating closely with our sports foundation. And we've got a new young coach there, James Perry, who I think has done a really good job of painting the picture for where we're going. and then framing what we need through the lens of where we're going, right? It's not about, better nutrition for the sake of just addressing that this semester. It's about building a championship program and so forth. So I guess you've probably heard many iterations of responses to the tell me where you're going. And I'm curious from your perspective, what the coaches say that is more compelling versus less compelling. Do any coaches stand out as being really good partners at being able to help you articulate that vision when you ask where you're going? Because if they can't share that with you, how are you supposed to translate that to a donor?
100%. I have two really good examples. Judd Logan, he's our track and field coach. He's been here for 20 plus years. They won the indoor and outdoor national championship last year on the men's side. And when you talk about where his program is going, it's ultimately that we're going to win championships. And that's what has been his goal from day one. And he's good at selling that vision to his athletes and what that commitment needs to be to get there. And so when you talk about talking to a donor, you talk about Judd Logan, 9 times out of 10, they know him because he was our throws coach. He's an intense individual. He actually just battled cancer, and there's some great stories out there about him. But, he shared I told my doctor, I'm going to do whatever you tell me, I'm going to do more because I'm going to beat this. I'm going to treat this just like I make my athletes treat being an athlete. You talk about a guy that can sell something, it's him. And then our women's basketball program is wildly successful. National championships. They're top 7. They're number 7 in the country right now. And we have a second-year coach, but she's been in the program. She actually won the first title ever as a player for the program. Then she sat on as an assistant coach, and now she's the head coach. And last year, she said something that was really great. She goes, I'm not Coach Ramsey, who was the coach that coached her, and I'm not Robin Freilich, the coach that took over for her. I'm me. I'm Carrie, and this is what my team's going to be. We're going to rebound relentlessly. We're going to do these things. And I go, that's what you need to tell your teams. And because if we do those things, we're going to win national championships. And again, ultimately, when you talk to these coaches, it's about that, getting to that stage. And there's teams that are good that don't talk about what they need. They talk about what their program is, the type of athletes they're going to recruit. Those are where donors have a much easier time investing, because that's what it is. They feel like I'm investing in that program because I gave so much for it, and now I want to see them be successful.
So how many varsity sports do you have at Ashland?
So we just added what's called stunt, so we're up to 24. 24 varsity sports.
So 24 varsity sports, and how do you possibly decide how to spend your time every day? Because this is something that, Brown 37 varsity sports, large advancement team, but small sports foundation. There's really 2 dedicated fundraisers plus a director, and then there's, events and other support. But even covering one team with one person exclusively could be more than a full-time job. Yet they've got, 2 people for 37 teams. You're yourself for 24 teams. Everybody has needs and priorities. How do you possibly rank where to spend your time yesterday, today, tomorrow?
Boy, that's tough. To be honest, so the one thing I do a lot of is I try to focus my energy on who's already has support and making sure we're retaining, if that makes any sense. But looking at this group of people we got to keep, and how are we going to keep them? The acquisition piece is then where I'm banging my head. How do we better market this to parents? How do we better market this to the alumni, and also communicate what it does? And so that's where the Eagler Club came from. 3 sports on our campus have their own club. The Gridiron Club is our football program. It was founded in 2006. It does a great job. They have a great board, strong board. And our Fast Break Club is for women's basketball, and our 2-on-2 club is for the men's basketball team. And again, they have great, strong boards that are doing things. But I tie into that. I'm helping them be more efficient. Hey, how are you soliciting these people? And then when you find out as an admin, printing and then stuffing envelopes and doing all these things, and then I talk to them about well, we can do this way, taking that off their plate, allowing them some time and just being more efficient there. In addition, we weren't tracking anything. We knew nothing about what was going on. And so I tie in and help there. So then the Eagler Club then is this idea that you can give to any team, any amount, it will support them, and you're a part of one big group of what's called the Eagler Club. It was founded in 1970. I don't know the history, but from my vantage point, I never felt like it was a club. I don't think people ever felt like they were a part of something. So what I did is I tried to make some very tangible and easy to manage donor benefits. And then from there, grow it. And we'll see where this goes. But I think that we have a little bit of time to figure that out, because the way it worked in the past is if you made a gift to softball, for example, and you were giving it to help for a trip, it went into the Eagler. But I don't think those people necessarily thought they were an Eagler Club member. They weren't solicited in that way. So I think what we're doing is we're cleaning that up. We have true Eagler Club members now, and those people that are supporting softball or some other sport for some other reason aren't necessarily in the club. And so as we figure that out, then we're going to figure out membership. We're going to figure out how to better engage that group. But I'm thinking doing events then around that. You can only be invited if you're in the Eagler Club, those types of things, because then people want to be in there and they want to be a part of that. So that was one. I struggled with it. Jeff Coleman is a friend of mine at ONU. He does Ohio Northern University, does the same thing that I'm doing. And he created the Polar Bear Club, but he said, no donor benefits. Who's managing that? Well, there's just a different thing going on at AU. The other clubs have it. And so I think there's kind of some sort of expectation. So I tried to make it where something could be handled with as simple as a letter. So you get a voucher to get a t-shirt. I don't have to mail a t-shirt. I send a welcome letter and I glue dot a membership card. And if you give enough that you can get into free games, you get a little punch out card that goes along. But I need to send that letter anyway. All I'm doing is adding a couple things to it. And the other part of that is we're not wasting money. If the person didn't want a shirt or doesn't get the shirt, they don't go to the campus store and get that shirt and get charged. I don't have a stockpile in my office of shirts. Like, I don't have to worry about it. They get to get the size they want, and they actually have, I think, 10 choices of shirts they can pick from. So doing stuff like that.
So where does fulfillment happen, if you don't mind me asking? The reason I do it is because we this came up on Saturday. We were discussing, hey, how do we create some incentives? You know, at the $1,000 level, you know, you get XYZ, or what if we could give official like practice shorts that the team uses? And there's no shortage of good ideas, but it always comes down to, especially as a volunteer board, who's going to fulfill it, right? We can't have a coach, you know, pretending like they're an e-commerce distribution center, and we can't, you know, probably route it to the bookstore because that's a different funding model. And so we always sort of get stuck with, you know, we are the donors, right? Our friends are the donors, and our, you know, the non-donors are our friends. And so we feel like we have a good level of empathy about what we might be able to do to package up some incentives, you know, not to buy their gift, but to create a real reward and a real feeling of belonging. But then the thought of, well, let's say 1,000 people did take us up on that special offer for the practice shorts. Where are we going to get the shorts, and who's going to ship them? So how have you addressed that? And are there other benefits you're circling on that maybe are manageable, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. So that, to be honest, that's the exact conversation Jeff Coleman and I had. He goes, if I give a shirt away at $300 or whatever, who's sending the shirts? And I said the same thing. I'm doing that. So right now I have a report. It's called a welcome letter, Eagler Club welcome letter. I run that report. It pulls down anyone who's made a gift based on the date range that I asked for. And then I do a merge. I have all of my levels and I have them all set up, and it has a message about the athletic department, thanking, all those things. And then at the bottom, we have a membership card that entitles you to 20% off at their campus store. Then you get the shirt voucher, and then you get game vouchers if you've given at that level. I felt like that was manageable. The benefits after that, I continue to make them more experience-based. So if you give at a certain level, you get a card, and it allows you access into our VIP spaces. We have a VIP space up in the gym, and we have a VIP space for football. one person, two people that make their way in there with that card is not going to hurt anything. Mm-hmm. Just an experience that they're allowed to have. If you give it a certain level of, that's a person you're going to invite to lunch or dinner anyway. Well, you get to have it with the athletic director and the coach of the team you're supporting. Again, super easy to manage. It's just coordinating schedules, and it's someone you want to meet with anyway, because that's a major gift potential person. Yeah. We have what's called Founders Dinner, where we invite people. It's more of a stewardship type dinner. We talk about impact, all these things. If you give it that level, you might as well, you're going to get invited anyway. Well, let's make it a perk. Yeah. I told coaches this. They ask about auction items, and I said, man, give them an experience that no one else can have. Sit on the bench. Those are the things, man. You're going to get bids out. They're just going to bid on that because they want to be a part of that. And that's what I was trying to do. Just a few tangible things. It makes it more manageable. I think I did like an email update that I send to the group. Again, I do that, but I have a great sports information group. I'm just stealing really from the internet. Mm-hmm. These people aren't in it like I am. So sending an update that just says, hey, did you know these things are happening? Here are the records of each of the teams, so on and so forth. They read it. They can skim it, do whatever. I have our athletic director. There's a spot there where he gives like an update, says whatever he decides he wants to say. But I'm trying to provide them something that you can only get because you're in the club. That's the key, in my opinion. So, because you can go to the bookstore and get a shirt. Like, you can do those things, but if you're offering these, if I do events, for example, in the future, hey, how'd you get invited to that? Oh, I'm in the Eagler Club. That's what I'm going for.
Love it. So you are in this role, supporting 24 teams, collaborating still with your advancement colleagues, collaborating with the coaches and the rest of the athletic department. Tell me a little bit. I mean, and it sounds like you have tremendous pride and passion, personal connectivity to the mission that you're selling as a student athlete, former student athlete. What are some of the projects you've been a part of that you're most proud of so far?
Well, so endowment is big to me. I feel like if we focus a little more energy on trying to endow things, and I say things, I mean across the board. If we're building a building, let's do some endowment in there to help maintain it. But these programs aren't going anywhere. Let's allow these people to invest in that and continue their legacy with support to something that they already care about. So how
do you balance that with the annual use, unrestricted, et cetera? I mean, how do you decide when to go for the endowment versus when to just, secure the annual funds?
I kind of can tell. And I say that in the terms of like, I can tell this person would like to leave a legacy of some sort, or they don't know it. So I'm going to use my endowment for baseball is the best example, but and
just give me the context, like why endow baseball? Like you somehow that landed on your desk. How did it land on your desk? Just walk us through from then to now. What's happened?
All right. So strong supporter of the baseball team, by far and away, probably single-handedly the biggest financial supporter in terms of donations to the baseball team. So a historian of AU athletics. I see him all the time. He's at everything. Great guy. And you get to talking to him and you find that he just wants to continue to help this team. And I get to talking to him about other options and just like you do these, you do this, but have you ever considered your legacy? Like the baseball coaches know, but a coach 10 years from now is not going to know. And he's like, I never really thought of that. And so I said, well, an endowment's a way to leave your legacy. You can name it. And then I explained how endowments work. 4%, yada, yada, yada. I didn't even know that was an option. And he goes, I wish I'd have met you.
Let's not take for granted for our listeners exactly how does an endowment work and why does it matter? Because, there could be folks working in advancement who haven't really gotten, the inner workings of why endowment.
I'm sure schools might have different rules, so you might have to check. But we have set that it's a 4% spend off of the value. However, it can't not be what's called underwater, that the initial investment, if you will, is below. There's no money available in that fiscal year. So $25,000 endowment's roughly $1,000 a year to help the program. And so my ultimate goal would be 100K up down the road.
So if somebody gives $100,000, you can spend 4,000 of that, 4% kicked off out of the endowment. And the assumption is that the market will return 4% or better. So effectively you have a perpetual stream of at least $4,000 per year. And if the market outperforms, that annual payout can improve, but effectively that $100,000 is protected. And at a minimum, that donor has created a $4,000 perpetual gift.
Right. And so I'm talking and said, you've done roughly $10,000 a year to this program. If your endowment was at the level of your lifetime giving, you would do that in it forever for this program. Your name goes on forever. And boy, did that resonate.
So literally, this individual is a loyal supporter, clearly philanthropic over a long history, but just didn't understand what an endowment was, and must have heard that term said hundreds of times through the course of his life, just through normal course of interactions plus his philanthropic support. But for whatever reason, that just hadn't clicked.
Correct. And
how many people do you think are like that?
Oh, a lot more than you think. I talk to, just even in terms of what you can do. So, for example, talking to a soccer player and saying, oh, did you know that you could do this? And they're like, I didn't know that when I was a player that there was some alumni that helped us. I said, well, absolutely. I said, someone has given their hard-earned money back to this program because they believe in it. And they didn't even know that was an option. So
maybe it's a reminder to just really not take anything for granted, even with our significant donors. Don't assume that they understand what an endowment is and why it might work, or don't assume that they read your mailer about what an endowment is or why you might want to consider it. And the same goes all the way down to don't assume that student athletes understand or students in general understand that philanthropic support is what keeps the lights on at many institutions. Yep.
Well, and I'll say this, just my position now, my relationships with current student athletes is going to be a huge asset.
Why?
On the road. They know who I am. They know why I'm here. And they get it. They see it. We try to make sure our student athletes are thinking. They understand that there are people that believe in this program and them as athletes. And let's make sure that they know we're grateful for that. Because that's important to me, that we communicate that.
Love it. So you went through, you had that initial conversation, you got him excited about and better understanding what an endowment is. Where did that lead?
He said two things. I wish I'd have met you 10 years ago, and yeah, I'll do it. Where do I sign, essentially?
Do what? I mean,
how
specific were you? Yeah.
So he's going to start. So he's the position. Doesn't want to back off his annual giving. So what we're doing is we're establishing the endowment at Ashland University. That's $25,000. So he's going to do a $25,000 pledge over 5 years to do that. But then what he wants to do is continue to grow that. And in years that he feels he can do more, he'll do more. But ultimately, then we are in the beginning phases of now that planned gift conversation. Because ultimately then now, what do you want to do annually for this team? And that will ultimately lead to a value. That makes sense. So if he wants to say, I want to give this program $10,000 a year or 15, whatever his figure is, we'll work backwards from that on what he wants to do in terms of an estate type of gift. He is a person, he's the perfect major donor candidate. When you have people out there have prospects to sign, they sit down, they have a lunch or a coffee, and they normally have a good feel about where they think this is going to go. On our first lunch, I was like, this is going to be a fantastic relationship, and this is going to lead to massive success and support towards baseball and other things, because he gives to everything. It's just how he is. But his baby is baseball. He loves stats. He loves following the team. He was in the lobby for a basketball game, and one of the baseball players walked through, and he had some smart aleck remark, and after the pitcher walked through, he goes, I don't know who has more fun, if he has more fun jabbing me or if I have more fun jabbing him. And that's the relationship he has with the team, the coach, and that's why he invests in it. He believes in it.
And so in that instance, it sounds like specific vision for the program is less of an issue, and it's more about understanding what different investment levels from an endowment perspective could mean in ongoing support. But he sold, and it's really a question of how much, how soon, how to structure it. Now, in other circumstances, I know you've shared that the importance of having a more specific vision about the impact can be required to get donors to go from interest to really being a secured gift. And so, can you talk to me about the importance of putting forth that vision, or the importance of visuals, for example, in the athletics field, where obviously, the before and after of the locker room or the before and after of the stadium can be really inspiring for people. But obviously it's not like you're in your office drawing out before and afters for people. So just talk to me about the different kind of members of your team that have to contribute to ultimately help create that vision for a donor.
Well, so the big one is always the coach of a program, one. But our athletic director, Al King, is big on that. Where does he want to see AU athletics? I've said that to him all the time. What are the things you'd want to accomplish in the next 5 years? And nothing's too small, nothing's too big. And then obviously, though, the university drives a lot of that too.
The obvious thing, every AD, every coach is going to say, well, we want to win, right? We want to be conference champs, or we want to be – every coach says that. Yep. So are there other things coaches could say or should say that are maybe less generic than we want to win?
Yeah. So the one thing that we do a really good job at is the type of student athletes we want to recruit. So like our men's basketball coach wants to recruit people who have a high moral character, Christians, all those things. And I think that resonates with our alumni base, because we were founded by the Brethren Church. And while you don't have to be Brethren to be here. We don't require chapel or all that. We're very religious in that way. And so that does resonate. They talk about the character and the type of athletes we want to have on our team and be a part of our program. And that helps. I would say too, in terms of that's in terms of the teams and athletes, but the vision I sold, for our Hall of Fame, this is one that I like. Our Hall of Fame was displaced kind of because we had a new Reinhardt room. It's called the Reinhardt room. Two beloved professors from the university passed away. They wanted to impact the gym. And so now we have a VIP room that overlooks the court. And the wall space that we had to take to put doors in and whatnot took away where we had the Hall of Fame. And we have a passionate donor who loves our Hall of Fame, and wants to know who's in, all these things. And I went and had a conversation and said, hey, this happened. We think it should be showcased in our lobby, and we think it should be showcased through digital touchscreens. And we think, but one of the things I said, what I want to happen is, when Grand Valley, their rival, and Fair State, and they're huge schools, I said, and their facilities are phenomenal. I said, I want their athletes to walk through and their jaws to drop, because that's what our athletes do. We go there and we're like, oh my gosh. And I always say, it's one of the things, because I went here, the fact that we compete and we beat those teams is incredible. When you look at facilities and resources, it's incredible. So the type of coaches that we have, they're good at what they do. And our alumni base care because they want to see us have this success too. And so, but he was like, I love the idea of that. That resonated with him right away, because he got it. He's been to Grand Valley. He's walked through there. He's like, yeah, let's do this. And his name's on it. He definitely wants it to be that good. So that's how I try to sell it. You're right. It's pretty generic a lot of times. We want to win GLIAC championships and we want to win national championships. But in addition to that, though, rarely, we have Adam Shaheen playing for the Bears. We don't have a lot of guys going pro.
Right.
We have track athletes that are pro too, but 3 or 4 here and there. They're going to join society. We want to have good people And that's in every university's goal.
Yeah, it was interesting. The Brown football team has been struggling in recent years, and so to hear firsthand from a new coach what that vision is, and the vision absolutely is to bring back an Ivy League championship. But what was more interesting to me was the milestones that lead up to that, right? Big vision, yes, but here are the sub milestones. One, we need to get our roster from 90 people to 110. You know, our competitors have a more complete roster than we do. Why? It starts with recruitment and it starts with student athlete retention. How are we going to better retain student athletes? Excellent career mentorship and support, which our board can help with, even being able to get down to nutrition and some of these other things. So it was really kind of like, okay, big vision, yes, but here are the specific areas of weakness that we need to address in order to lead to that, you know, multi-year vision. And so I'm curious, based on your experience now having 24 coaches as your fundraising partners, if you will, if there are things that, I mean, I guess you've shared a little bit about the coaches who've done a great job, and without naming names, like, are there things that you wish other coaches would either take more seriously or try to think about in being a partnership to, or being a partner to athletics development?
I haven't thought a lot about that, because I typically go in with the big picture, but I'm going to steal what you just said, because when I talk to coaches, when I first came in here, I said, when you hear Associate Director of Athletics Development, what does that mean to you? And they started talking about fundraisers that they do. And I'm talking about like going and working concession stands at Browns games or sweeping the lot at Cedar Point. And then they gave money back, and that was fundraising to them. And I said, okay, that's not what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. After I explained that my job is to engage alumni and fans and friends and supporters of your program to give philanthropically to you, what would you do? And that they didn't know what to do. So the first step that I've had is that I'm trying to communicate what I'm trying to do and why. But what is important now is that I say, what's your goal and how are you going to get there? Because I do say that. I say, like, sell what you want, where you're going to be. But now, if they can go another step and say, and to get there, here's what we need, that will allow me the ability, and them too, because they've thought about it, to communicate better their plan and why it's important.
And I'm a volunteer fundraiser, so now I was thinking, okay, those are really specific points that then have a cost, right? And we can now start to not only talk about the big vision, but if we're going to improve our roster size from X to Y, what is it going to take to do that?
Right.
There's then kind of some additional milestones that can be sold, if you will, to donors across the giving pyramid. So you've mentioned fans a couple of times, and I know that, look, since you and I were in college, the growth of social media has sort of redefined just how fans across all levels engage with their teams. And I've noticed Ashland obviously takes that really seriously. And there's some both, entertaining, but also inspiring digital content. And I'm curious just to get your perspective on the importance of digital and social media for a small shop, small school, how to balance that relative to other channels, and any successes you've seen as it relates to social media in your work. Obviously, there's been a lot of attention around giving days and so forth, but I'm curious if there are other initiatives you've worked on where social media has become more relevant.
Well, I'm going to shout out our GA, Scott Vandersloot. He does a lot of the video work you see on our social media athletics page. He is incredibly talented at what he does. He always has kind of a good vision of where he wants to go. He takes certain shots for certain reasons, and he knows in his head where he's going, and then he posts things in. But it's twofold. The interaction that those posts get is unbelievable. But then the other side of that is the current student athletes. They love it. They're in that video.
And recruits.
This, across the board, in my opinion, is one of the most important things that we can do to recruit and retain and hype our fans and our alumni base. And video is the way to go. And so he has some videos that mean people are like, their comments are like, where's the wall to run through? Like, they get hyped, and that's what you need. And when you talk about that allows us to leverage that and those people that are interacting with it and go, they love this stuff. Now, would they invest in it as well? And I mean, or give to whatever terminology you want to use. You have the ability now to leverage that. If he graduates this year, whoever comes in has got some big shoes to fill, because we've really jumped from the 2 years ago to now. He has continually ramped that up. He's always got good ideas, great relationships with the coaches, going, hey, I need some time with your athletes dressed up. We're going to turn off the lights. We're doing this shot. We need the fog guys are going off over here for this shot, and putting it together, and that stuff sells. And so we are going to have to continue to do that. I talk about having email platforms that allows you to embed video I think is important. Mm-hmm. To click to go see it, we're like, I don't want that. And so as we're looking at vendors for that, that's an important feature that I think that we need to offer.
Well, we talked a lot about this at Raise, and in general, we believe really strongly that there needs to be more of a funnel approach in the advancement sector. The giving pyramid has informed our work forever, and it obviously will continue to do so for the high-end donors. But for everyone else, the growth of digital content, the growth of video, the distribution on social platforms really does create this top of funnel excitement. But then if you don't do the work to then figure out who are those people, are they on your radar? Should they be on your radar? What is their level of engagement historically? It could stop there. So I'm curious just to get your take on how do you, in your role, right? Because you're not the person creating the video or doing the fog machines, but if people get fired up and excited and want to run through the wall, how do you then think about collaborating with content and social media to get better names for your list, right? I mean, because at the end of the day, you can't focus on every single constituent out there. You've got to focus on the ones that can support you today, are engaged today, have the capacity today. And so how has social media played a role in that, if at all, yet?
So the one way I've used it is the one other project that I will talk about would have been Danny Krasinski, head soccer coach, passed away. And when we had our post about that, obviously tremendous outpouring of support there. We've done a couple of things to honor him. One was there's an endowed scholarship that is fully funded and should be awarded actually next year. It'll be awarded to a women's soccer player. He was the women's coach. And so that's how that memory can go on for the family. It's good. I mean, I don't think there's any better way than to say, hey, you know what? Let's have this student athlete meet the family, because this student athlete is playing and has a scholarship in DK's memory because he had she has certain characteristics that he looked for in an athlete. The other one was mission that led was he wanted to do shelters out at the field. We're the only team in the conference apparently that didn't have them, so the family came and said, we think this would be really neat too. So what we did is we introduced that concept, and as we were doing that outreach in the masses, one way I looked for some new names was that post, because obviously these people had an affinity and they cared. But I am telling you right now, we kept that so internal, we didn't really push it out enough. So this was a way to communicate directly with people that at least would not just chuck it in the mail, in the trash or delete the email. They would at least interact with it. And that was successful. It led to additional donors towards our Give Campus campaign that we used. So that's the one way I've leveraged it. You're 100% right. We got to do it more in different ways. So if there's a big hype video for women's basketball, now let's mine that data.
Yeah.
Are any of those people Fast Break Club members? Yes. Which ones aren't? Okay, they need to know that they can join the Fast Break Club, and let's target our messaging to them because they care about it. They like every post that's women's basketball they like, or every women's basketball post they comment on, whatever it may be, and then we could go from that. But again, it's hard as one person because these are just so many ideas, and then you're supposed to also go have X amount of visits, and you're supposed to, it's really difficult. But got to find time to say, all right, we're going to target this a little bit better. But as you're thinking, what better way should I tried to acquire new donors to some of these clubs than to looking at who liked the posts that were specifically about their team. And
it's a work in progress, but you've got a lot on your plate. There's great momentum. I mean, we've shared some examples where the Baylor University women's basketball team did almost exactly what you just described. And whether it's a longtime coach, in your case, who passed away, faculty member who retires, anyone or any specific individual that has impacted the lives of your students and alumni can be an opportunity to just create a giving funnel campaign. Create the story, share the content, measure the results, prioritize the leads, and then do outreach, whether it's via one-to-one as a frontline fundraiser or one-to-many in more of a crowdfunding or mass appeal format. And doing that consistently every single day is a lot in a small team, but for those really specific challenging areas to fund, it can be a great catalyst to test something new. I guess as we wrap up today, I am curious to get your perspective on just a couple things. One, if you could wave a magic wand and change something about the advancement sector, if anything stands out, anything that you would change.
I think the one thing that I would love is if the assumption of what we do wasn't what it is. And whenever anyone asks me what I do and I say it, they immediately have a negative reaction to it. And it's sad because I'm not taking people's money. I'm not robbing them. I'm selling a vision. I'm getting them excited about something that they care about. And when it makes sense, hoping that they'll support it. And I just don't get that right now. That's really odd to me, that what we do isn't thought about as good. I know, like, I see these stickers, I'm doing good. I know a lot of some places have been doing that. And I really do believe that. And I just really wish I didn't have to always overcome that weird awkwardness that I get when I tell someone what I do. Oh, I can never do that. Like, why? I get to talk to people about four really, and sometimes more important years of their lives. I get to talk to them about their time and their teammates, and when it makes sense and they want to give back, they do. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't, and that's okay. I still had a great conversation and had a lot of fun, and that would be great if we could change that. And I don't know if anyone else feels that way or not, but I get that all the time.
Look, I'm with you, and obviously it's a sympathetic audience here on the Raise podcast. But listen, your optimism and enthusiasm shows, the front row mentality shows, and everybody. I mean, we're all being marketed to and sold to constantly.
Yep.
And I think there are a few things we can be marketing and selling more than the ability to impact access to education, the ability to improve people's lives through the power of better facilities, or more complete roster, or better financial aid for first generation students. And so I think anybody that has worked in fundraising, either as a volunteer or as I think about that as a volunteer fundraiser for the Brown team. Like, I know that there are certain people, when I reach out, they know why I'm reaching out.
Uh-huh.
So I have that same feeling of guilt, the same way sometimes that, you might get in response to somebody sort of saying, why do you want to have lunch with me? Right. I've got former teammates. They're like, wait, why do you want to get on the phone right now? And it's just because we believe, and we just have to continue to sell, not just the specific impact and whatever fundraising appeals we're making, but just the broader importance of philanthropy. So you're not alone there. Keep fighting the good fight. And it's incredible to see in 9 years what you've been a part of at Ashland, from starting in the registrars, cranking out as DJ Kyle Vaughn, coming in live all the way.
Right. From Ashland, Ohio.
Getting, the Hall of Fame funded, and the baseball program endowment underway. And I know you've got a whole bunch of other projects. So thank you for giving me a window into the world of athletic fundraising from the inside. And, can't thank you enough for being on the show.
Thanks. I appreciate it. What's that?
Any closing thoughts?
No. Hey, if you're listening to this, as Brent said, keep fighting a good fight. It's what we do is good. It's fun. And it's so fun when you get to see the student athletes. Like, in my opinion, I know others, like, endowment, if a student receives an endowment, whatever it may be, you get to see that end result. And man, there's nothing more rewarding than that.
Love it. Thank you, Kyle, for being a part of it. All right. Have a great
man.
day.
Have a good one.
Bye.